All right. Hello, everyone. So today I have someone with me that I have really wanted to talk to. Um, his name is Cole, and he has a channel called the Polyglot Grind, which I thought is a really cool resource. And he does something that I haven't seen any other polyglot or language learning channel or resource do. He has a nice combination of language learning, travel, and self-development, which for me was the really cool part because to learn a language, it really is about that in a way. So, Cole, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
So before we get into all the good stuff, I just want you to do a small introduction so that people can know a bit more about you.
All right, so my name's Cole. I'm from Canada. Born and raised here. I was born in Toronto. I grew up in a city nearby. I was in French immersion from the first grade until about the sixth grade, but they ended up removing me because I was really, really bad at French. And then when I was about 14 or 15, if I remember correctly, that's when the whole interest in languages and everything began. And then I started off with German, and then it kind of just went from there. Mm.
Yeah, I mean, this is one thing that I got from watching your channel. It's like you said like 13 or 14, and like I'm not sure how old you are now. So I mean, even if you're 10 years older than at that point, I mean, you've been learning languages a long time.
Yeah, so I'm 26 right now. Um, so yeah, it's been quite a while now. It's been quite a while. Um, it's definitely because a lot of people ask me this, so it's definitely gotten easier as time's gone on. When I first started, I had no idea what I was doing. I just remembered what we had to do in French immersion, and that obviously doesn't didn't really teach me very much.
Oh
So
no.
I had to kind of develop my own way of going about it. I also watched a ton of like the bigger language channels and stuff back then to kind of like put me on the right path. And then yeah, so it's been just over a decade, but yeah, I'm still going at it, still having fun, still enjoying it.
Wow. Now, is this French immersion thing like a an option program that you guys have in Canada, or what is that exactly?
So it is so we all do have to learn French at school, but
Uh-huh.
French immersion is optional. My parents wanted me to get a head start at French, so that's why they put me in French immersion. Um, and but most people, if I remember correctly, don't start learning French here until the seventh grade or maybe the sixth
Uh-huh.
grade, depending on what school you go to.
Wow. And was it French where your language learning journey where you started to take it more seriously started from, or where did that come from?
So ironically, being in French immersion actually made me hate languages. Um, yeah,
Schools
I
have a way of doing that, don't they?
exactly, yeah. So I actually hated languages until I was 14. Um, uh, they kind of just went from there. So like French immersion, I as much as I really didn't enjoy my time in French immersion, um, I did make a lot of good friends in French immersion, and it also did give me a bit of a head start because I feel like if I hadn't spent any time in French immersion, my journey would have looked different, or it might not have even started at all.
Wow. And one thing that I thought was interesting is that you would actually kind of take a very proactive way of language learning. Like maybe you would go to malls and try to start conversations, and I thought that that was really cool. You have a quote that I thought was really interesting, and it's something that I've thought about before, but I don't know if I'm 100, like I don't know where I stand, but I completely see where you're coming from. You said that you can't be a very successful shy language learner.
Yeah,
Why
yeah.
don't you expand on that? I think that's such an interesting concept.
So when I first got into learning languages personally, I was a lot more shy, and so like I started with German, but then like I ended up giving up twice, and then I ended up learning Spanish because the principal at school told me that if you learn multiple languages, the subsequent languages end up getting easier. So I was like, okay, I'll learn Spanish just to get the ball rolling a bit because it's more similar to French. So I was still very shy at the time, and I grew up in a city that had a pretty high Latino population.
Oh,
So there were
nice.
tons of native speakers of Spanish around me, but the problem was talking to them, and that was the scary part. So I remember my first conversation, at least the first that I remember, was in Costco, and there was a group of a group of Latinos just hanging out in Costco, and I wanted to talk to them, but I was so scared. And then but I knew I had to practice Spanish. I needed to practice it somehow. So I just walked up and I approached them and we talked for a bit. And then at the end, I just remember thinking, wow, I didn't die. They didn't like judge me. They didn't insult me. They were really patient. They were super friendly. And then that's kind of when I saw that if you want to be successful at language learning, you have to push your boundaries, and you can be a shy language learner, but if you want to be a very successful language learner, in my opinion, you have to at least be a little bit outgoing. If you want to, well, it depends on what you want to use languages for. Like, I like to speak them. Some people just learn languages to read them and enjoy literature, but I prefer to speak. So I definitely had to force myself to come out of my shell in order to get better at this.
Wow. And about how old were you when you started trying to start conversations out in public?
So the first one was about around the age of 15 I want to say 15. And then I would do it occasionally, but I was still pretty shy until I turned about I was either 20 or 19. I can't remember. But the second time that it really dawned on me, yeah, so I would have been 19. So I just turned 19, and there was a language exchange in Toronto. It was called Toronto Babel. I don't know if it's still around now, but that was my favorite place to be.
Wow.
So I remember I walked in, I was super shy. It was my first time ever being in a bar before, I think. So like I walked in, the organizer, super friendly guy, he greeted me, and then he just like asked me if it was my first time, if I'd ever been before and stuff, and what language I wanted to practice. So I told him that I wanted to practice some German. So he introduced me to a group of Germans, and then I was just so shy. So at first I talked for a bit, and then I was just too scared, so I just sat there. And then eventually I just got into my head a bit too much. So just like, okay, I need to leave. But I was too shy to say I want to leave. So eventually I just got up and left, and they kind of looked at me like, where's he going? Because I don't think I said bye. And then I left, and then on the train back home, I realized, okay, like if I want to take my language learning to the next level, I really, really have to get on top of my shyness. And then so from that moment on, I started pushing myself to, like, approach more strangers and stuff. My friends would come along with me and help too. I had one friend, he always thought it was really cool to see me speaking Chinese, and I was too afraid to approach. So he would approach the group and explain that I was learning Chinese, and then I would just talk, and then he was really cool. So he helped me come out of my shell a bit. And yeah, it was all at 19. That's when I started really taking things really seriously.
Wow, that's really cool. And so this idea of getting out of your shell, were you primarily focused on language learning at the time? Because I know there's this whole concept of social freedom, and you want to be able to be social enough to talk to people, make new friends, to talk to a girl you might be interested in. Did this also extend to other aspects of your life, or was it kind of like just narrowly focused on trying to practice your languages?
So it definitely did extend to a couple other areas of life, because I really wanted to work on just getting over my shyness in general. And I had this, he's still my friend now. He's one of my closest friends. He's a very outgoing guy. And we would go out and do things like we go to McDonald's, and then like he'd just chat up the cashier, and then they'd be having a conversation as if they knew each other for 10 years. And I was always like, how do you do that? Like, how do you just approach these people? And he was like, he always explained to me that he would feel the fear, and then he'd have to act on it, because he would always say that if he let the fear of approaching people consume him, then he would never do it. So he would always do it to like kind of prove to himself, I can do it despite the fact that I'm scared. So he really inspired me, and he met a lot of interesting people, and he introduced us to a lot of interesting people, and he met all these people through just, just being at line at Starbucks and just saying, hi, how's your day going? Or chatting up the worker at like at the electronics store when he was buying a new pair of headphones or something. So that inspired me to do it too. So and I just saw how it benefited all the areas of his life. So I wanted to try and emulate the same thing, and he really inspired me a lot. So yeah, I definitely did it for language learning, but just in general, just to better my life in general.
No, absolutely. And this is something that I was really paying attention to, let's say maybe 12 years ago. I wanted to kind of get out of my shell, because I would describe myself as partially shy, but partially social. But there is that shy parts that, was always lingering, and even to an extent is. So, I would try to, let's say if I saw a girl who was cute, I would just say, oh, hi, I just wanted to say you're cute, and my name is Mark. Because no matter what would happen, not that I did that a lot, but, with a particular girl who I really wanted to meet, it just made you feel that you're not dependent on, social circle. You're not dependent on nowadays, your phone, which is a thing. I have a friend that is basically just doing this now, and his only goal is just to improve his confidence. He's not interested in language, but it's definitely a nice thing, and then you see people who, maybe on the outside you would think, wow, how can they do this, but maybe because they're a little overweight or not so attractive, but you see that they're enjoying themselves and that they bring, joy to other people, and you think, geez, I want a part of that. And I think
Exactly.
it's really just such a positive thing. And I saw that you did something super interesting. You called it the Starbucks challenge, where,
Yeah.
well, why don't you explain this a little bit? I thought this was so interesting.
So, I heard about this challenge in a Tim Ferriss book. I'm pretty sure it was the 4 Hour Work Week.
Oh.
Um, Ironically, that's the same friend that really inspired me to start pushing my boundaries and to start talking to more strangers. He actually he just came to my house one day and just dropped off the book, and he's like, "It's yours now." So I had no more excuse to not read it. So I read it. I learned about the Starbucks challenge, and he talked about going to public areas, and then you have to lie on the ground for, I think it was 30 seconds, and you're not allowed to tell anybody what you're doing. And then the whole point is because, like, you're gonna go, people are gonna look, and people are gonna judge, but you still have to act to feel the judgment and not let the judgment stop you from what you were doing. So I'm not gonna lie. The first time was hard. I walked around the mall. I did maybe like 4 laps, and then I was like, I can't do it. And I was gonna leave. Then I was like, you know what? I drove all the way here. I have to do it. And then so the second you lie on the ground, well, first everyone starts looking at you like you're insane. So I was really scared they were going to call security on me, but it seems scary until you're doing it. Once I was lying on the ground, it just felt, as much as it wasn't a normal thing to do, it felt like the most normal thing in the world. Like you don't feel the judgment anymore. The time just whizzes by, and I ended up. It honestly gave me a bit of a kick, like a bit of a rush. And then so the original plan was just to do it once, but then I was like, this was amazing. I want to do it again. So I started stepping up my game a bit. So the first time was at the mall, and the mall was kind of quiet. So it was scary, but not as scary as I would have liked it. Then the second time was at a grocery store. So it's a bit more busy. The employees stopped working to stare at me on the ground. One guy looked like he was going to call an ambulance. And then for the third one, I really wanted to really step up my game. So I went to a crowded Tim Hortons. The Tim Hortons was busy. It was lunchtime, tons of people in there. And I just walked in and I told myself, this time I'll do it for 45 seconds, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So I just laid down, and then I just started the timer, and then the employees were staring again. The customers were all staring. Uh, it was honestly, the third time wasn't even that bad. The first 2 times were pretty scary, but then the third time it just felt normal.
Wow.
And then it honestly really did help. Like, it trickled down into the other areas of my life. And then just whenever I'd be like, I feel kind of scared, I would just imagine it's only scary before I do it. Once I'm actually doing whatever it was that scared me, it's not that bad once you're actually in it, if that makes sense. And then that's what the challenge taught me. It was honestly, I'm really happy I did it, and I'll probably do it again.
Of course, of course. Something that you said earlier that your friend told you about, feeling the fear. Like, there's this idea that I think is really nice. It says, well, feel the fear and do it anyway. It's like, and that's completely, you know, on the right path. And I heard another person say, like, everything that you want, everything that's good is like on the other side of that fear zone or that comfort zone. And it's so true, because right now I live in Mexico City, and I would tell you one of the best things that I ever did for my Spanish was to take university classes here, just like a student from Mexico. And I just asked if I could take the classes, if I could show up, participate. And first I had to go there to the class on the first day and basically like ask the teacher in front of like all the students. And like every single time I would do this, like I would be nervous, but the result was they let me do what I wanted to do. And that was wonderful because, you know, I did that for maybe like a year and a half. And you can imagine what it will do for your language if you are taking university level classes. I took linguistics classes for a year and a half. It like it transformed my Spanish. I'm sure of it. And you know, there were times where I saw the teacher there or the students there, or maybe I would feel nervous about like having to speak my Spanish in front of everyone. Not because my Spanish was bad, but I find that when you know that eyes are going to be on you, it adds an extra level of nerves. Like when I'm on the subway, you know, it's not that, oh, they're going to hear me speak Spanish and think I'm speaking terribly terrible, but it's just like everyone's going to know I'm a foreigner. Everyone's going to look at me, and having all those eyes is a bit nerve-wracking.
I
But
agree.
if I didn't do that, you know, so many good things wouldn't have come from that. You know, I wouldn't have had a wonderful girl, had a great relationship, improved my Spanish, learned about linguistics, met people, had cool experiences. But it was all on that other side of that kind of gray zone, that fear zone. And so I completely relate to your journey, what you talk about, and these things you do. Like when you did this Starbucks challenge, I felt like I was there with you, like almost if I were you, and I'm like, oh my god, okay, I'm sitting down now, I'm lying down now. Like I you took me through the experience, and even when I knew that you started to feel more comfortable, like I started to feel more comfortable. So it was a really interesting thing.
Cool. I'm really happy to hear that because I was actually going through like the older videos on my phone, and I just came across that one, and I was like, oh, I should finish editing it and then just, and then so I'm really glad that it like it that it helped and that you were able to feel like you were there too and everything. So I'm really happy to hear that like the videos are having the effect on people that I'm going for. So that's
Of
super cool. I'm
course.
really happy to hear that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I didn't get to ask you, but how many languages many languages do you really speak? It seems like a lot.
So, my personal number would be 10. Some other people would like add some other ones onto there, but I have a very high criteria, or like it's like a very high level that has to be not necessarily a high level, but there's a certain level that I have to reach before I feel like I can claim that I speak the language.
Oh,
Um, so there are a few languages that I can have very basic conversations in, like for example, Korean, to a very, very basic extent,
mm.
and Cantonese also to a very, very, very basic extent. So, uh, like for example, I went to Chinatown a couple days ago, and then I heard them speaking Cantonese, and I wanted to practice Mandarin. So I asked in Cantonese if they could speak Mandarin, and then I was able to understand the short little exchange, but I couldn't speak more beyond that. Um,
Okay.
but I would personally say 10.
Nice, nice. And which would be your strongest?
So after English, I'd say German.
German. Okay.
Mhm.
Interesting. And I found that our approaches were quite similar. Like I didn't see anything out of the ordinary that I would think, oh, no, I don't know about that. I'm not sure about that. I doubt it. But you talk about a concept which I know is really important, which is living a language versus learning the language. Can you expand on that a bit?
Gladly. So a lot, because like a lot of us have our first language experience in school. A lot of us are taught to learn languages instead of living them. So you learn it in the classroom, and then you drop it as soon as you leave the classroom. And That's what I did when I first got into this too. I had no idea what to do. So as soon as I learned that living languages was actually the proper way to go, what I would do is I would make the language my life. So for example, although I'm not studying French at the moment, I keep my phone in French, just to keep my mind fresh. Most of the music I listen to is from different countries. So like I listen to tons of foreign music. I don't really listen to English music that often, to be completely
Oh,
honest. So for example, right now I'm learning Russian. I'm taking a quick little break just to give my brain a little bit of time to relax, and because Russian is hard, as you know.
mhm.
I'm brushing up on my Mandarin right now. So what I'm doing to make Chinese my life is So I wake up in the morning. I read Chinese on Link, one of my favorite resources.
Mine too.
Then I have some Chinese podcasts that I have downloaded on my phone. So when I go walk around the city, I listen to the podcasts. If I'm ever in a Chinese store where the owners are Chinese, I try to only speak to them in Chinese and try to use as little English as possible. And yeah, I just try to surround myself by Chinese as much as possible. And then I was doing the same with Russian. And as soon as I'm like finished taking a break and I go back to studying Russian again, I'm gonna make Russian my entire life. So like I try to talk to as many Russians as I can. Right now over FaceTime or Skype, just because the pandemic prevents us from like meeting people outside and stuff. But I'm not at the level yet where I can put my phone in Russian. I mean, I want to, but that's not going to happen for a bit longer.
Right.
But yeah, and then I watched a lot of Russian TV shows. I just finished a series on Netflix in Russian with Russian subtitles, just to really, really force my brain to assimilate as much as I could.
Right.
Yeah,
To the
so I just
lake,
try to.
right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was
I
really
just
good.
finished that last night. It was cool.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
I hope there's a second season. Looks like there might be.
Yeah, I'm thinking so. I'm really looking forward to it. Really looking forward to it. Mm.
Right. All right. So yeah, I mean, that's essentially what I do. Fortunately, I only have I only speak two foreign languages, and one's at a high level, one's more at the beginning stages. But I can converse and all that. And I did have my phone in Russian for a while, but I just changed it back to Spanish. you know, I remember I wrote a comment on YouTube about how I did that, and someone's like, oh, and I'm like, well, if they're like, oh, if you have a really serious situation and you have your phone in a language that you're not completely, you don't completely understand yet, you're going to be super motivated to know what it is in the moment. I'm like, no, I mean, I need to know exactly what I'm doing in like serious situations. But that was a very idealistic comment, but whatever. So what I wanted to say is, so I only speak two foreign languages. You speak many more. And one thing that I noticed that you don't seem to have a problem doing with is just maybe like dropping the language for a while and maybe eventually coming back to it. I know that a lot of people might feel guilt doing that. I want you to take us through your process, like how you feel okay doing that. What's it like when you bring it back up? Because I've seen videos where you say, oh, I'm studying this, I'm going to give it a break for a while, I'm going to come back. And as far as I know, you do.
It's really strange, but like I've noticed in the past couple of years, my I'm not as patient as I was before, because when I was learning German, I devoted at least 9 months or maybe a year to German, and it was fun the whole entire time. I didn't get bored. Oh, well, I probably got bored a couple times, but I didn't really feel like dropping it. And then it was the same for Chinese and Portuguese, but I'm finding that nowadays, or at least the past 3 years, I would generally get bored after about 3 months. Not bored, but it's just, there's so many interesting languages out there that, like, if I was learning Dutch, for example, and then I stumble across Czech, I'm just like, oh my goodness, Czech, it's just so fascinating. And then I end up wanting to drop Dutch for a bit to check out Czech. And then I'm learning Czech and then Swahili. And then, I just have to check it out. And then, like, you get into Swahili for a bit and then Russian. And then, so I just kept bouncing around from language to language. And then I just realized that, I don't know, just because I'm just not as patient as I used to be. And I'm not as able to just commit to one language. I just realized that like this dropping languages and brushing up on other ones was just going to be just like a regular thing. So I find what I do in order to not feel guilty is I try and get the first language to as high of a level as I can, at least to the point where I can drop it and not have to worry about forgetting it completely. Because, for example, I was learning Danish and I actually ended up losing my Danish book. And then it took like a month
You
to get
ended
a new
up
one.
losing your
and because
Danish
my level
what?
wasn't very high, So I was using a Danish Asimo book, so the book and the
Oh,
CDs, and then I lost the book somewhere. I have no idea where I lost it, but it just never popped up again.
oh
So
wow.
I had to drop Danish, not because I wanted to, but just because I had to. And I dropped it for about a month. That's how long it took for the new book to arrive. I don't know why. There was just like some shipping issue, but took a long time. So I found that I ended up forgetting almost all of it, and I actually did feel really guilty because I put a lot of time into it and then I lost it. But then Catalan, Portuguese, Mandarin, and so on. I devoted quite a bit of time to those languages. So when I dropped them to learn other languages after like a certain amount of time had passed, it wasn't that bad because like they're at an intermediate level. I like to compare it to you know for example, I don't have any children, but just when a lot of people move out at 18 to go to university, college, maybe 19, 20, so on, and then at that age they can survive on their own for the most part. They might need the occasional advice, like I call my mom every once in a while for advice and stuff, or like just for help. But for the most part, I can survive on my own. And it's the same with languages. So if you can get a language to a point where it's more or less self-sufficient, like you don't really have to put that much effort into maintaining it. Just speak it every once in a while, watch the odd YouTube video, listen to the odd song, and it'll keep it fresh in your mind. Then I feel like you're at a safe level to move on. But just like at the age of 10, I would not have been able to survive on my own. So if I were to just try and move out at 10, I'd probably have to come back home after like the first day. So I kind of view languages the same way. So if you drop a language that you're too much of a beginner in, then you're going to forget everything because you're not at a level yet where it can be self-sufficient.
Right. I mean, I
Mm.
think that's smart advice because I see people, especially on Twitter, and they're just like, I'm going to learn this language. Oh, but this language looks so nice. I'm going to learn that too. And I feel like they're not getting anywhere in their studies. So at least if they're going to do that, get to a solid level before.
Hmm. I do agree. Um, I think this is happening because it seems to be glamorized, at least on YouTube. Like I do understand that everyone learns languages for their own reasons. So like I don't really want to say that anyone's doing it for the wrong reason because I don't know if there is a wrong reason to learn a different language.
I can think
But
of a person.
yeah, well, yeah. Um, but if you go on YouTube nowadays, you can definitely find. I've heard the term three sentence polyglots tossed
Uh,
around in a couple places. Like like I don't want to sound like I'm attacking anyone because like anyone who learns languages, I have a respect for. But I just think it's kind of I've definitely seen some channels where there are people that will speak three sentences and then claim they speak the language. Or they'll talk to someone, the person will respond, and then they'll just ignore their response and then kind of control the conversation to keep it going so that it seems like they can speak.
oh
Which,
yeah.
yeah, like which could be good in theory, but just what bothers me is when I read comments on these videos, you see a lot of people that kind of look up to these people and they're like, wow, that's so cool, I wish I could do that. And then just the problem with it is I feel like as language learners, we know what actually goes into it and everything. We know the hard work that you have to put into it. And it just kind of rubs me the wrong way because when the average person watches a YouTube video where someone claims to speak, let's say like 40 languages, and then they can only say a couple sentences, then they assume that this person must have some gift that they don't have. And then, they might go home and try and study the language or study Spanish or something as an example. And they're not fluent after a week, like the person in that YouTube video claimed. And then the person just gives up because they're like, well, that person on YouTube can do it, but I can't, so I must not have what it takes, and then they give up. So that's just what rubs me wrong about like the three sentence polyglot phenomenon. I just feel like it sets an unrealistic bar for regular people who might want to learn languages, and then they see it and then they can't live up to it and then they drop it. So like I really admire the people who can they can actually have proper conversations. Like everyone makes mistakes. I make tons of mistakes. So speaking perfectly is not really that important as long as your message is understood.
Right.
But I just when I see a video where someone says I speak two languages and both are at a pretty decent level, even if it's at like an A2 level or something, or B1, that's still impressive to me.
Of
But when
course.
I see someone speak 40 languages but they only know like one or two sentences in each, I don't know, it just bothers me just because it just, I don't know, it just, I feel like it harms the average person more than it does good, in my opinion.
Right. And this is one thing I appreciate, that on your channel you will just say everything that I did here. Like, you have a video where you speak a bunch of languages. I think it's your last video. And at the end you say, I repeat, everything that I did here, you can do. I'm not special. It's just about just time, effort, and method, basically, right? And
Hmm.
that's quite a healthy message.
But thank you, thank you. Yeah, because I try to be as transparent and as open as possible because I do understand that a lot of people will watch videos like that and think, "Oh my goodness, he must have some gift, or he must be talented, or it must just come easier to him and stuff." So that's why I try to be very open about my failures and very open about like when I drop languages, so that people can kind of see what's going on behind the scenes. And I know my following's not the biggest yet, but if I can the way I see it, if I can show just one person that doesn't believe in themselves that they actually can learn their target language and that it can actually open up a lot of doors, because I've made tons of interesting friends and like I've had a lot of experiences and opportunities that I was only able to have because of foreign languages. So I mean, people inspired me. Like I remember when I was getting into this, watching Moses McCormick, like
Of course.
Laoshu's videos
And for me
inspired me
was as well.
tremendously. Yeah, like he really showed me that it was like it's possible. And watching Benny Lewis, like him trying to speak from day one and stuff like that, to speak and then having positive experiences, like just looking up to these people and being able to learn from them and be inspired by them. And now that I mean, like I said, my following is not the biggest, but the fact that people actually do look up to what I say now, it just feels really good to be able to give back to the community what the community gave to me.
Of course, I completely agree, and I feel the same. I for many years I was inspired by people like Moses, people like Steve. Like listening to Steve when he would do like his weekly videos was such an important part of just like my weekly routine. And I would consider myself like taking more of like a Krashen Kaufman approach, but I've also adapted some of my methods to some of the other things I've seen and liked. So when I started Russian, I had a very nice plan of attack. And I see people on the internet and they're saying like, "Oh, I've been studying Russian for 7 years. I'm not getting anywhere." And at like a year and a half, you can see what my progress was like after not studying any grammar. And you know, of course, my Russian can improve, my grammar can improve, of course, but I was able to accomplish something, and it's like there to see. And I'm able to have full conversations um, in Russian without any English, of course, with mistakes and all that. And through time, that will improve. But I'm just so glad I took like such like a natural approach, like such a humane approach. And my segue is, you really reminded, with the way that you studied German, really reminded me of kind of this whole thing, because I recently made a video where I explained how, you can speak or from day one and do it in a successful way. And basically I outline a method where, you're doing your input, but basically from the first week or two, you can start to have a human connection. It's basically like, imagine if you were my teacher, you're my Russian teacher, and I'm going to say like, okay, this is what I did yesterday and this is what I'm going to do today. And we kind of, she tells me it. This is how you say this in Russian, right? Although we're using English. And then she'll give me a response back, and then she'll write it down for me. And then like I'll read it, and we're basically having a conversation, but I'm using English, and I'm figuring out how to say these things that I need to say, and they're all very relevant to my life. And I did this like week after week after week. And basically, I would get like, the documents, and I would have the audio. Then I would have a lesson that's personalized to me. I would review it slightly, but I was just mainly doing my normal input work. And throughout time, speaking just emerged. And this was one of the things that we agreed on. You said something like, I don't necessarily believe I'm waiting a long time to learn a language, nor do I believe in starting from the beginning. You said just like when speaking emerges, it emerges. And I think this is the healthiest attitude to take, that when you're speaking emerges, that's the best time to talk, right? So,
Mm, mm,
and what I wanted to say is, I want you to talk about how you learned German because it's really a fascinating story. So, what can you tell us about that? I want the audience to really know how you did it. It's really cool.
All right, so um, uh, I started learning German. So I would have been, I was in grade 8, so I guess 14. Yeah, so my aunt gave me a couple of her old German books to try and learn from, and I still had no idea what I was doing. So I dove right into the grammar. I tried to learn lists of phrases out of context. All these things make me cringe when I think back to them. Like all grammar, no practice with native speakers, list of words, no input, no YouTube videos, no well Netflix wasn't as popular back then yet, but like just grammar. And then so I ended up burning out and giving up. Then I tried again, same thing. And then that's around the time that the principal was like, if you learn Spanish, it'll help. So I learned Spanish to be able to learn German. And then the second time around, um, I had Spanish under my belt, and my French had also improved a little bit. So I felt more experienced, and I felt more prepared to take German on for the third time. Or it might have been the fourth time. I think I might have tried and failed 3 times, but I'm pretty sure it was 2. But anyway, so for Christmas, a lot of people wanted like video games and like stuff like that. I wanted this one very specific German course, so my mom got me that for Christmas. I was super excited. She got me the German course and the Italian one, but I decided to just do German first. So what I would do is I would learn words and phrases, but in context this time and with audio, so I was actually at least moderately correctly. And then I used to play a lot of Xbox, so there was a lot of Germans that would play Call of Duty 2 specifically. So I would purposely play Call of Duty 2 around the time that the Germans would be available, and then after each game, I'd check the gamer tags to see like which gamer tag said Germany, and I'd message everyone. So I messaged a bunch of people. One guy got back, so we started playing together, and he wanted to learn English. So he'd respond to me in English, and I'd respond in German. And so how it would work is we'd play together, and then I do my best to speak. Like I spoke very badly at the beginning, but I tried to learn like how a baby learns language. Just trial and error. As long as the message was being conveyed correctly, then that's all that mattered. And then as time went on, he introduced me to more of his friends because they would all play after school. So we'd all play together, and he had one friend who didn't speak any English at all. So we'd have to speak German together. So that really forced me to really push my boundaries. And then so I just kept repeating the process. So I'd come home from high school, I'd hop on Xbox, I'd play with them and speak with them, and then after that they'd go to bed. Then I'd go back to as Moses likes to put it, I'd go back to the barracks. I'd start learning more words and phrases again. And the next day I'd get right back in there using the new words and phrases again in speech. And then I just keep repeating the process, and I ended up creating my own immersion in my basement. All my friends would like they'd kind of like they tease me and stuff, like just like I had the joke, but it worked pretty well. So like I didn't have to actually go to Germany. I just created the immersion environment in my basement. And I'm not gonna lie, I played quite a bit back then. So I'm getting
Lots
quite
of
a few
immersion.
hours of practice. Yeah. So yeah. So that's how that went. And then after a while, I ended up kind of getting bored of German. This was like a couple years down the road, so I kind of dropped it, and I started learning Chinese instead. And then I still had German in the back of my mind because I would play Xbox every single day. I would listen to tons of German music. I would watch whatever German shows I could find on YouTube and stuff at the time, German YouTubers. So there was quite a bit of I had quite a bit of input. And then I dropped it for a bit, so I started to get very rusty. And then we had quite a few German like meetups in Toronto and stuff. So I would go and check out these meetups. It was predominantly Germans that were in Canada looking for other Germans to hang out with, and just hang out with other people from back home and stuff. So I'd go to those. They were super welcoming, super friendly, and so I'd go there, practice German and everything, and then being forced to speak face to face instead of on Xbox, that really forced me to get better. And I actually ended up making a friend there, super nice, super friendly. She let me stay with her in Germany, and just somehow our friendship just developed in German. So we would
Mm.
never speak English to each other. Even when other people were around, we'd speak to them in English and then back to each other in German. Our
Wow.
our other friends didn't like that because they couldn't understand. But that really helped. So like our whole friendship was in German. So just I now have other friendships that are purely in certain languages and stuff, and like other friendships that exist only in German. Like we could speak English to each other, but it just feels weird.
Of course.
So that also helped. It really helped me to think in German because if I think about a conversation that her and I had, it would be in German. So it really helped to keep it fresh in my mind and everything. And yeah, that's pretty much how the journey went. But I have to say, probably 80 to 90% of the German I learned was on Xbox. So if
Oh
anyone's
my
watching this and
gosh.
thinks that video games are bad, um, you can learn to speak a language fluently through playing video games. So yeah.
Wow. Because I had a guy on the last time who became a very nice Russian speaker, and he has a pretty big YouTube channel where he's just speaking to the Russian audience. And he said that he used video games, and I asked him how feasible it is, do you think, to learn languages on video games? Like, how much can you really learn? And he said, the kind of to the effect of, you know, use it as a supplement. So I wanted to ask you, how much of a language do you think you can learn by using video games? And you tell me 80%. So I think that's just freaking crazy, but awesome.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, um because I was speaking every single day and not really learning in a class, and also having fun. Fun was the most important part. Like I wasn't actually deliberately focusing on acquiring the language, so a lot of it just came naturally. So when I think about random German words and where I learned them, I actually don't know because I just seem to just know it. Just because I would always, whenever they would speak amongst themselves, they'd only ever speak German. So I was learning a lot of grammar naturally and in context. So um, yeah, so I think that's why I was able to learn such a high amount just from the video games, just
And
because
this game
it was
was a
just
game,
natural.
yeah. And this game was a game you can speak to other people, or is it just the audio that's coming to you from the game?
So it wasn't the game itself. Like we played a couple games together, but what we would do is around that time, Microsoft released some feature where you could do Xbox Live parties. So you could have up to I think it was 8 people in like a audio chat room. So
Oh
you could
man.
be playing different games, but you could still talk to each other. So that's what we would do. So just after school, I joined their Xbox Live party, and then we just sometimes we wouldn't even play. We just chat. Um, but yeah, and we played a couple games together and everything, and we just chat. Obviously, I ended up learning quite a few swear words first, just because that's all I was hearing. Um, like when you're playing those games and stuff, tons of swear words. So
You
yeah,
said
so
you
my
learned some
German.
like random German words like kill that guy, or I don't know, like your first words are just like some random war words.
I'm not gonna lie. The very first German words that I learned were what the soldiers were yelling in Call of Duty. Um, so it's like, ich werfe eine Granate, I'm throwing a grenade, or like, gib mir Deckung, and stuff like that.
Oh my
I knew how to
God.
say those things before I could say, hi, my name is Cole. Hi, I'm learning German. But I knew how to say I'm throwing a grenade,
That's so
or
funny.
give me cover, or stuff like that, or like take out that flat gun and stuff like that. Yeah.
Wow. And I mean, as we know, like each language has a story, each language is its own adventure.
Mhm.
Um, what for you was like the most interesting situation that caused you to learn a new language? Did anything happen to you that was interesting out of the ordinary that made you go, oh, let me learn this language? Or, something where it's right there in your lap and you took it? Or did you have anything like that? Or was it always just like, oh, Portuguese sounds nice, Italian sounds nice, oh, Russian sounds cool, I want to study that?
Mhm.
Or what would you say?
So two of the most interesting stories, I guess. Well, they're more of experiences, but Catalan. I decided to learn Catalan because I went to Barcelona and I'd never been before. It wasn't even planned; it just kind of happened. Just because there was a cheap plane ticket while I was in Germany, so I was like, sure, I'll check out Barcelona for 3 days. So I went, and I noticed that all the signs were in a different language. So I'm just trying to adjust the computer. There we go. Okay, so yeah, I noticed all the signs were in a different language, and then I knew that Catalan existed, but I didn't know to what extent at that point at least. So I just started asking some of the locals. I was like, "Can you just teach me a bit of Catalan? Like, I don't know anything about it." And then whenever me as a foreigner would express interest in Catalan, their faces would just light up, and they just seemed to
Wow.
be so touched. And then so I had never experienced that before. Like for people to be so touched by the fact that you're just interested in their language. Well, Chinese, yes, but Catalan was just different.
Of
Um,
course.
I noticed like when I would speak to people in Chinese, they were shocked. But when I would speak to people in Catalan, when I would ask about Catalan, they were touched. So
Wow.
yeah, so I got back, and I remember I'm not the best with finances, so I got back and I had $33 in my bank account left
Oh,
from the trip. And I remember I was like, okay, I can buy lunch today, or I can buy that Catalan course. So I bought the Catalan course,
like a
and
good
then
language learner.
yeah, and then that's what ended up starting my little Catalan journey. That's why I ended up learning. And then Portuguese was similar. It wasn't necessarily that people seemed touched when I would like try and speak the basic Portuguese I knew, but it was just there's a bar in Toronto, um, and every Thursday the drinks were half price. So all of the international students would always go there for the cheap alcohol, and I would go there for the languages. So
I would go there for both.
yeah, yeah. After a while, I'm not gonna lie, I started going for both. You know, the cheap beer and the languages.
Hell yeah.
Um, so I had tons of experiences where I would think people were speaking Spanish from far away, and then I'd approach and I'd start speaking Spanish. Like, no, 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 we're from Brazil. And then I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. It's just from far away. It just sounded so similar to Spanish. And then that happened a lot. So eventually, I was
Whoa.
like, I may as well just learn Portuguese because I was just thinking, I'm sitting on a gold mine. There are so many Brazilians here. This is a gold mine. I could be speaking to so many of them, like learning about their culture or talking to them. And then so that's why I learned Portuguese, just because that kept happening. And then yeah, so those are the two, I guess, the most
Cool.
interesting stories behind two languages,
This
Catalan
was
and
at a
Portuguese.
bar in Canada, right?
Canada, yeah. Hmm.
Uh-huh. Oh, wow. And I find that Brazilians are some of like the most open, just funnest, cheerful people that you could ever come across, you know? Like for me, I have three countries that I really, really am interested to kind of visit and explore. One, Russia, two, China, and three, Brazil. And I don't know exactly what language I'm going to learn after Russian, but I'm leaning towards Chinese. But even then, like I need to increase my like why or my motivation to do it. But Portuguese for me, since it's so similar to Spanish, it doesn't just like say, Mark, you must learn Portuguese, you know?
Yeah.
But as a country and as a people, I'm like so interested to check it out. And even if I don't dedicate a lot of time, maybe I could do like, I don't know, 3 to 6 months of Portuguese study just to make my trip there when I go, more fruitful because we both know what it's like to communicate in the language with the people of that culture. And it's just like, it just opens up doors beyond doors. And it's just such a great experience.
Hmm. Hmm. I agree with that 100%. And especially because you already speak Spanish,
Mhm.
learning Portuguese, I feel like you could reach a pretty high level after a month, even. I feel like you'd be good enough to go after just 1 month. So yeah, I don't know. Portuguese was definitely one of the most enriching languages that I learned.
Wow.
It's so many nice experiences, and I had a little bit of a running joke going with some of the Brazilians that I'd meet because I'd see a group of Brazilians. I wouldn't hear them speak, but I'd see them, and I would just they just seemed Brazilian. And then I'd approach and then be like, "Yeah, we are Brazilian, but how'd you know?" I'd be like, "You guys look like you're enjoying life." Like I just like the Brazilians always
Oh.
just seem happy, and then the Canadians just seem, even though I am Canadian, it's just I just feel like we just seem a bit more down and like
Mm.
not as the Brazilians just always seemed happy for some reason. They just always seemed to be in a more cheerful mood. So if a group looked happy, I was always like Brazilians, and I always try and approach. And if a group looked, just today's okay, I was like Canadian.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know you've done a bit of traveling, and you were learning a bit of Dutch, and I thought it was interesting. You were going to Dutch speaking countries, trying to speak whatever you could of Dutch, but I know you were in Holland, you were trying to speak, and
Mhm.
I think that being a Dutch learner in Holland has to be like one of the most difficult tasks because they're notorious for having such a nice level of English. And if you don't come with like strong Dutch, I imagine that they're just like switch. So how did you do it? How did you maintain these conversations in Dutch, even though you may have had a low level? And because I'm sure they just switched like that. They probably didn't entertain you like the people that spoke to you in Catalan did. How did you go about that? Because like when someone does that to you, like you feel the pressure. You feel all of a sudden, oh no, I have to
Mhm.
switch back to let's say English or whatever. How did you
Mhm.
manage that whole situation?
So when I first arrived in Amsterdam, a lot of people did just respond in English. I tried to speak Dutch, but most people, but like they do it out of courtesy because
Of course.
like I would choke on my words a bit, and then well, a lot. I'm not even gonna lie here. I would choke on my words a lot, and then they would assume like I think they were assuming polite, and that I would prefer to speak English. So I think that's why they would switch. Most people would keep speaking Dutch as soon as I explained that I was trying to get better at Dutch. A lot of people were confused. They're like, "Why would you waste your time?" I was like, "I don't
Oh.
know. I just like how it sounds." But they're like, "You could. We all speak English though. There's no point." And then a lot of people didn't understand.
No
um,
point.
yeah, exactly.
Don't do it.
I had the same experience with Danish. A lot of people were like, "But why Danish?"
Uh-huh.
Um, but yeah, I just kept forcing myself to do it, and as time went on, I started to feel more comfortable. And also, I was in Amsterdam for a few days, and then I went to Rotterdam second. Um, in Rotterdam, people, I didn't really have a problem with that. Like even if I was choking, people would still. But in Amsterdam, the second you make one mistake, English. Um, yeah, so it was kind of unfortunate, but as soon as people understand what you're doing, that you want to actually speak Dutch, then you have to wait for the confusion to subside,
The
and then
confusion.
they'll then they'll speak to you in Dutch.
Yeah. Well, that's nice. So just so long as they know that you're trying to make an effort to learn their language, despite all the confusion, then
Yeah,
they're like, all right, we'll do it.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when I was still like kind of in a lower intermediate stage in Spanish and I would go out to like trendy areas, there would always be people that would try to speak English.
Mhm.
You know, there was a point when I tried to leave the whole kind of like international circle where I really was trying to speak Spanish, and that was like, oh, come on, there's just like a knife through the heart. It was like, hey man, I know you speak English, but like I'm really trying to learn Spanish. So can you just speak Spanish to me? Okay, start in. Oh, so anyway, da, da, da. It was
Yeah.
literally that fast. Like, oh, okay, but that hasn't happened for a long time. And if people speak English to me now, let's say if I'm at a party, it's just basically to show off, hey, I speak English.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not that it's necessary.
Mhm.
Um, so it's a pretty funny
That's cool.
situation.
Yeah, yeah. I can. Yeah, that's actually yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, it happened to me in a bookstore, and he just spoke to me like the worker just spoke to me in English. I'm like, and I don't know why. I'm like, I speak Hungarian. Do you speak Hungarian? And he's like, oh no. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. We'll have to speak Spanish then. And then he was so nice. I told him I was just joking. I do speak English. I just wanted to practice Spanish. But yeah, like you said, lots of people do it just out of courtesy, right? It's not like to insult you that your language skills are so bad, although sometimes it may feel like that.
Hmm.
It's just mostly out of courtesy.
Hmm. Hmm. I agree. Um, I noticed because when I tried to learn Korean for a bit, you might have seen the videos from like maybe 4 years ago or something, now 5. So I tried to learn Korean, and Korean is very different when you compare it to English. It's a very different language. So I was very bad because like the learning curve at the beginning was pretty steep. So I'd go to language exchanges and I'd meet Koreans and I'd try to speak to them in Korean, and they'd always switch back to English. And then I noticed it's because if you seem like you're not understanding, the other person picks up on it, and then once again, out of courtesy, they'll switch. So I learned how to just fake understanding. I know it's kind of disingenuous, but I just figured if I fake understanding, they'll speak to me more, and I'll be exposed to more words and phrases and grammar, and then I'll actually be able to speak a little bit better next time. So I got really good at that, at just faking understanding. And then as soon as I did that, the rate at which people were switching to English kind of dropped. And I had the same experience with Russian. My language exchange partners and I laugh about it now because uh, you might have seen that little post I put online.
I did.
Russian, and then some of them read that, they were like, "Oh, so you were faking it at the beginning?" And I was like, "You caught me. You
Thank
caught me."
guy.
They're like, "Well, we had a feeling, but we weren't sure." I was like, "Nope, you caught me. I was faking understanding a lot. Still am."
Wow. So
Mhm.
actually, that was the most perfect segue in the history of segues, because I was just going to ask you, what is your plan to proceed with Russian? I have a general idea of what your level is. I liked in your video, by the way, whenever you needed to say a word that you didn't know, you're just like, Russian, 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 English, Russian, 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 English. I'm like, damn, that's actually a good idea. Just completely forget about it and just say the word in English and continue. I thought that was that was quite slick.
Oh, thank
Um,
you.
what are your plans? Where do you want to take your Russian? What are your plans on how to achieve what you want?
So, I'm really in the former Soviet republics and stuff. They really intrigue me.
Me
Um,
too. This is one of my most one of my most motivational things. Like I just think it's
oh,
so
cool.
fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, because of that, I'd really like to check some of these countries out. Like specifically at the moment, I'd really like to check out Belarus and Ukraine.
Of course.
They both seem like pretty interesting countries, and I'd really like to understand the history and just how the people think, but through Russian. And I also
Absolutely.
do want to learn Ukrainian eventually. It's very high on my list, but I'm going to have to wait until I get to a higher level of Russian because that's just not going to happen right now. But
You want to dip into
yeah,
the Slavic languages.
exactly. Yeah, I do plan to branch into the other ones too. But yeah. So for Russian, I'd like to see Ukraine and Belarus, and I would really like to check out Russia too. It just seems like it's kind of complicated to get in. Like you have to get a visa, and
Right.
the whole process is pretty complicated. So I would like to check out Russia too because there's so much history, and then there's obviously the smaller republics within Russia that I'd also like to check out. I just want to just the mindset and just everything about it. Just I don't know. I just feel like Russian would be a good doorway into this part of the world because I also think that from what I've seen, the level of English is kind of lower is lower over there than like Sweden and Denmark, for
Of
example.
course.
And I know a lot of people dread that when they know that English isn't spoken in a certain place, they dread it. But I'm happy. I'm like, okay, challenge accepted. Let's do this. So yeah, that's the goal with Russian. So as soon as the pandemic blows over, fingers crossed. I really hope that happens soon, and life starts to go back to normal or whatever the new normal will be. I'd really like to check out like the former Soviet republics and just
Right.
kind of like, have you heard of a guy named Bald and
I
Bankrupt?
was just going to say, if you're interested in that, this guy is, his channel. That's what you got to check out. I would
Yeah,
describe it as my favorite YouTube channel. It's awesome.
honestly, I can agree. I can agree. Like because especially because he goes off the beaten path. Like people go to Russia, St. Petersburg, Moscow, the big cities. That's it. But I love how he goes to those small towns and interacts with the locals in the small towns. Don't speak English, and like he hears their stories. Like he'll talk to babushkas and like all that stuff. It just fascinates me, and he honestly really inspires me to want to go and do something similar.
Me too. Last year was the first year that I was learning Russian, and I would watch those Bald and Bankrupt videos as they were coming out, and it was just so motivating because he's really connecting with the people, with the culture, with the territory, and I think if you're learning Russian, just to watch that channel, even though it's in English, although it's a bit in Russian, like it will give you even that much more of a push of motivation. So anyone who says what you just said, I always say, do you know about Bald and Bankrupt? Because literally,
Yeah.
I would say that that's my favorite channel on YouTube, period.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's super cool that you watch him too. That's actually really awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I was watching him when he had like, I don't know, like 700,000. Now he's like into the 2 millions or something like that. His
Wow.
channel just blew up like big time. But yeah,
And he actually, so the first video that I saw of his was the video where he was in Moldova in the capital.
this is why no,
And
this is the least visited city in Europe.
in your
Find out why or something like
yeah.
that. That
And
was one
then
of my first ones too.
oh cool. Well, little known fact. So I don't know the whole background, but there's another YouTube channel, another YouTuber. I forget the channel's name, but he ended up going to the capital too. And then so apparently after Bald and Bankrupt went through and like showcased the state of that one subway station, the government actually went in and completely renovated it because they saw the video. And then yeah, when this other guy went, it looks amazing now. It looks fantastic, great. So like just through Bald and Bankrupt going around and just showcasing stuff, it actually helped out the locals. Like they actually went and fixed their subway station. So I just thought that was super cool. And it's even wheelchair accessible now. So even people in wheelchairs can like properly access the subway, where before it was a bit complicated. So I don't know. I thought that was super cool.
I did hear about that. And well, it goes to show, I mean, that video got millions of views and it even made like national TV over there in Moldova. And I guess sometimes shame can work just to motivate you. All right, come on, I got to get things together. And that's super cool.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right, so I wanted to ask you, I only got a few more questions. The interview's coming to an end, basically, but you do talk about handling anxiety. Now, I think this is something that not many people talk about, especially not in the language learning community. And how do you manage anxiety? How do you deal with that whole situation? Because, I mean, it's something that I know that we all go through, and you've delved into this kind of realm a bit. What do you think about the topic?
So, so I still do suffer from anxiety to this day. It's just I've learned to live around it for the most part. And then I've written a couple articles on my blog about how I do that. So similarly to how my friend would, there'd be a person, and he might be afraid to talk to that person, and then he'd feel the fear, and the fear would drive him. That's similar to what I do with anxiety. So, when you get on a roller coaster, you're scared, but you're safe. And then the fear almost fuels the fun. Like the feeling of being afraid makes it enjoyable. Like when you're you're falling really fast, you're scared, but you're enjoying yourself. So that's more or less what I ended up doing with anxiety. So, there's still a lot of things that scare me. So especially, like after the pandemic and everything, and like not being able to be social with people and everything, I found that I've gotten a lot more shy again, and I've kind of receded back into my shell.
Me too.
Even like doing this call, like before the call, I was kind of nervous because I was like, I haven't done this kind of thing in a while. But just like a roller coaster, it's scary, and if you can learn to turn the fear into the enjoyment factor, then it's easier to do it. So I was like, you know what? I am afraid to do a video interview. It's been a long time since I've done one. But you know what? I'm going to turn that fear into the drive. And then when I frame it this way, how can I explain it? So it's like, like even right now, I do feel a little bit nervous, but I'm using that nervousness to fuel it, because I know that if I keep pushing myself to do this, eventually I'll get back to the point where a video interview isn't something that makes me feel nervous anymore. And also, it's kind of like, I've had a lot of experiences kind of just like, like it's in my hand and then it just slipped because I was too anxious to go after something, or like just too scared to do it. So the fear, not necessarily the fear of what if, but like, well, the what if, and the fact that I let my anxiety stop me from doing things actually scares me more than most of the time. The idea of not doing what I want to do because of anxiety scares me more than actually just trying. So a lot of the time, like right now I'm in Vancouver, and I'm from Ontario, and I mean the pandemic was the pandemic was like, it was pretty crazy. And then a job opened up out west. So I flew across the country to come work out here. I just got laid off because the season kind of came to an end because of the pandemic again. But coming out scared me because I was like, I could move out there and then there could be a huge spike in cases. And then I might have to go back home and then like, I don't have a job again. But then I was thinking, or I could just stay here and not be working and then, and like, not trying. And then when I looked at it that way, when I framed it that way, staying home was actually scarier than coming out here. Because if I stayed at home, I knew I was going to be bored and unfulfilled and just stuck at home, not working, not really doing much. And I knew if I came out here, yeah, it might be scary. Yeah, it might not work out. Yeah, I might have to go back home. But the fear pushed me. And then also it was a lot more scarier just to not try. So I just always try to frame things in the sense that if I don't try, not trying is actually scarier than just trying and potentially failing. And then that's how I kind of get around anxiety. I just use the fear to fuel me. And then I just reframe the situation so that it's not as scary.
What an amazing answer, and I completely agree because I have this ideal of the man that I want to be, and it's a man that goes after what he wants and that doesn't let the fear control him, but still the fear is there. And I'm basically going to end the interview this way. I'm going to mention something that's it's kind of personal. I never expected to have an interview about such these kind of topics about, especially intertwined with language learning. There's a park near my apartment. It's a wonderful park. It's a park that I walk in, that I run in. And I thought, oh, it'd be nice to kind of like make a video or make some kind of, thing when necessary or when I could like walking through the park. But it's like, just the idea of me like holding a phone and speaking, whether it be Spanish and people are going to see that I'm a foreigner, they're going to be like, what's that? Or if it's just speaking English, then it's like all the attention that I'm going to get from speaking English. And, you have a video where you talk about just this kind of topic, the anxiety situation. And I thought the most inspiring thing about that was at the end of the video, you're walking through Germany and you're doing exactly what I'm talking about. You're filming yourself while walking through a public place and you're saying, right now, I'm nervous, but hey, this is what I want to do. So therefore, this is what I'm doing. And just by seeing this video made me think, like, if I ever do have an idea and I could, apply it to doing it, let's say in that park, man, I got to do it despite all my fears, being nervous. And, before it was just like one of those ideas that I was playing with, it would be really cool, but like all these things that, could make it hard for me to do it. But now I almost feel like I have to do it just because of that video. So with that, I want to say thank you for the interview and thank you for your inspiration. And that's all.
Anytime. Thank you.
So I'm going to leave all your information in the description. Are there any parting words that you would like to leave with?
So I'll try and summarize this little random technique just in the spirit of how we're ending it. So one way that I was also able to kind of learn to push my comfort zone is by taking cold showers. I'm not really doing it right now because the weather's really cold, but I noticed that, you get in the shower, you turn the water on to cold as it can possibly be. And then I found that the same fear that I would feel before I jump under the water is the same fear that I would feel before approaching someone, before, lying down in the mall and doing all doing all those things. So I found that by forcing myself to take cold showers every morning. So what I would do is I would get in the shower, turn it on to cold, stand in front of it. And then at first I would repeat it to myself. I'd be like, okay, feel the fear, embrace it, and then act despite it. So like I would stand in front of the cold water. I'd remind myself, this is cold. This is not going to feel good. And then I would let the fear, consume me, and then I would jump in. And then that technique really, really helped. And then, if I needed to approach someone, if I needed to do something, I'd feel that fear coming in, and I would just be like, you know what? It's just like jumping under the cold, jump under. And then, so I just figured it would probably be nice to end it on that. Just because that technique, it's pretty easy to do. Almost anyone can do it because most people have access to cold water, at least in the West. I highly recommend using that technique. I learned it in some book or something a little while ago, but yeah. Mm. But
Right.
otherwise, thank you. I really appreciate you having me on. It was
Very
a lot of fun.
cool.
Super interesting.
Me too. All right. So
Mm.
we'll see you next time. Thank you so much and have a
Mm.
good one.
All right, thank you. You too.